call it Omicron, however you want to say it. The reality is we've got a very difficult customer on our hands. There are variants emerging all the time, but most of them aren't designated as variants of concern by the World Health Organization and the CDC. And the reason why we went through a few letters in the Greek alphabet is that the letter before Omicron, Z, is actually spelled XI. And no prizes for guessing, that is how Xi Jinping in China spells his name, the Chinese authoritarian leader. And the World Health Organization didn't want to touch that at all. The idea of naming the next big wave of COVID-19 after the Chinese president, after everything that went on with former President Trump and his frustrations at China's lack of transparency when this all first hit us in 2020. Omicron was first identified in Southern Africa, and the real heroes here are researchers in South Africa, the country, who identified this, rushed to tell the world that this was happening. Some of them feel punished now that there are travel bans put on that region.
South African science should be commended for discovering this new variant and sharing the information with the world. We have played our role very responsible.
It does not mean that the variant specifically came from those countries. It just means that South Africa has a very good tracing system. They were the first to alert us. What it does remind us of is that these variants are tending to be identified in countries that do not have high vaccination rates. The last two variants of concern were identified in India and in South Africa. They're also countries that were not super quick in vaccinating their people. They weren't able to buy the vaccines that they needed from countries like the United States. And it's really a reminder that until we can coordinate across all governments globally, we're going to continue to be at risk of new variants emerging. If you're a politician dealing with the fact that there's around about a third of the population that just does not want to take a vaccine, is that you need to buy some time to figure out exactly what is going on with this new variant and how to handle it. And the question becomes, do you want to save as many lives as possible? What freedoms are you willing to limit and to trade off in order to achieve that outcome? Or are you worried about what's happening with your economy?
Travel restrictions can slow the speed of Omicron. It cannot prevent it, but here's what it does. It gives us time.
So we have seen the Biden administration come out with a new temporary travel ban that's politically sensitive because President Biden was a big critic of President Trump's ongoing travel ban from Europe, which lasted 18 months. We see more and more medical experts saying these travel bans are ultimately not very effective. President Biden is in a very tricky situation. He's attacked by Republicans for not somehow solving the COVID crisis, but it is fundamentally true that a lot of elected Republican officials actively work to undermine his policies. They don't want mask mandates. They haven't wanted for there to be a full functioning open market for vaccines.
All of the previous variants, which have also had differences in the spike protein, have responded to vaccines and especially to boosters.
This variant is particularly different. It does not mean that you're going to have worse symptoms if you contract the virus. What it means is that the virus is getting smarter and may be able to avoid any vaccine that you've had. Most of the vaccines that we're using in America have remained extremely effective at keeping people out of hospital and in limiting the number of infections that can get passed around the community. We don't know exactly how dominant Omicron will become, and we don't know when the next variant will be coming. And all of this leads us to the point that it's not enough to just vaccinate one country.
Inevitably, it will be here. The question is, will we be prepared for it?
It's a very confusing time for health officials and what they can message right now. The vaccine makers have said it could take them 3 or 4 months to fundamentally alter their vaccines to make them better able to cope with this variant. The new variant really puts big question marks over how the holiday season will unfold this December. But what it reminds us is that we maybe need to move beyond this language of returning to normal. Just as with a flu shot being available every year, it is almost certain that we're going to be moving into a zone where we're being offered annual shots around the coronavirus. What Biden can do now is do everything he can to increase vaccine production. And President Biden set a very high bar for himself in how he said he was going to tackle this pandemic, how he was going to be more committed to an international response than President Trump was. And now this is going to be the real crucial set of months. Can he deliver on all of those expectations?